Due to rapid increase of immigration, the U.S. population exploded in the first half of the 19th century. This drove millions of Americans west in search of new opportunities and new land. The Americans justified this westward expansion by a belief called manifest destiny. In 1839, John L. O'Sullivan wrote a document on manifest destiny. The movement west was very beneficial for the Americans, but not for the Native Americans already happily thriving in the land. On one occasion, the Native Americans were willing to respond to the westward expansion by surrendering to keep the peace. However, this led to the event called the Sand Creek Massacre on November 29, 1864. This is known as one of the most tragic and infamous incidents of the Indian Wars. Colonel Shivington positioned his troops around the Cheyenne tribe at Sand Creek. Black Kettle, the leader of the Cheyenne, surrendered, held up a white flag above his teepee. Unfortunately, Shivington ignored the plea for peace, and him and his men proceeded to kill 150 Indians, including women and children. The Native Americans' response to the Americans' westward expansion through peace did not work. At this point, the Native Americans were forced to retaliate and resist the Americans' effort to move west. On June 25, 1876, a battle broke out between Federal troops led by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and a band of Lakota, Sioux, and Cheyenne warriors. This event was called the Battle of Little Bighorn. In Document B, it says, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, leaders of the Sioux and Great Plains, strongly resisted the mid-19th century efforts of the United States government to confine their people to reservations. In 1875, after gold was discovered in South Dakota's Black Hills, the U.S. Army ignored previous treaty agreements and invaded the region. This betrayal led to many Sioux and Cheyenne tribesmen to leave the reservations and join Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse in Montana. By the late spring of 1876, more than 10,000 Native Americans had gathered in a camp along the Little Bighorn River, which they called the Greasy Grass, in defiance of a U.S. War Department order to return to the reservations or risk being attacked. Document B. This battle was an example of the Native Americans responding to the westward expansion through retaliation and resistance. The Battle of Little Bighorn ended up in Native American victory. Overall, the Native Americans did not want anything to do with the Americans expanding west. The Americans nearly drove all of the buffalo, the Indians' main food source, to extinction, as well as drove the Indians themselves off their land into reservations, which was very degrading for the Native Americans. So, they responded in two ways. One way was through peace, and the other was through resistance. Neither response worked out well for the Native Americans. While the Americans, on the other hand, were determined to fulfill their God-willed destiny to expand west. They believed that nothing would be able to stop them, and it was their duty and their inevitable future.